Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us for our Expert on Expert series. We have an incredible array of talent here at Rapid7, but I have to admit, our guest today is one of my favorites. Raj, will you quickly take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Craig. I'm Raj Samani, Senior Vice President and Chief Scientist here at Rapid7.
Now, Raj, how did you get to this point? Give us a little bit about your background before we get started.
So I was a former CISO. I was the CISO for a large public sector department in the UK. And after that, I became a CTO at a endpoint provider where I was within the labs organization. I ran the advanced threat research division. And at that point, I started to take a real interest in how intelligence becomes integrated into the platform. Because for me, when you buy a cybersecurity solution, the most important thing you care about is that you're protected. So that's kind of how it began.
Now, you also have some night jobs as well. Are we comfortable talking about those here today?
Sure, yes. So, Chief Innovation Officer for the Cloud Security Alliance, have published the most recent book by the CSA on cloud computing, special advisor at the European Cybercrime Center, which is part of Europol. I also co-founded the No More Ransom initiative, where we go after criminal groups that run ransomware, and we make available free decryption keys for anybody out there in the industry.
And I think you've just given our audience why I'm so excited about our conversation
Oh,
today. A recent ransomware blog post you did, we talked about some of the clear tracks emerging about uh, the spray and pray approach versus targeting high-end attackers. Share a little bit more about that.
well, ultimately, I think organizations don't really care about how they're being compromised. The fact that they are being compromised matters. And one of the biggest challenges we're seeing is whether it's spray and pray or whether it's targeted, threat actors are becoming so much better in terms of the tooling that they have in order to compromise organizations. I think that's one of the main reasons since 2023 we've begun to see the growth of industries like vulnerability intelligence, because Vuln Intel wasn't really an issue when there were only maybe 3 to 5 O days being exploited in the wild. And that number is increasing at a rate and a pace that is quite frankly dizzying. I mean, I think it was 1 week where we had five what we call emergent threat responses in a single week. Now, to put it
Ooh.
into perspective, it used to be at best one a quarter, and now we're getting up to five a week. And these criminals have no qualms about burning O days because it means they have more. And they have more because we, as the society, are paying criminals.
So let's actually talk. One of the most fascinating things for non-intelligence nerds is by the way, intelligence nerds is a compliment. Those of you that are, you took it that way. The access broker ecosystem is just fascinating. For $500 to getting access to a system, talk more about that for a second.
So for less than the price of a cup of coffee, I can buy credentials to go out and compromise an organization. If I don't know how to do malware, I can get, malware as a service for about 250 bucks, $250. And ironically, that's lifetime support. And so this criminal ecosystem isn't just the initial entry vector, i.e., the acquisition of O days and the democratization of those O days. It's not even, in various stages of the kill chain, but actually, even once you've been paid, there are Bitcoin laundering services that effectively take and chop up these coins and make it hard to track. And so we live in a society in which for you to become a cyber criminal, and not you, but anybody to become a cyber criminal,
Yeah, I'm not interested, Raj. Thank you, though. I'm not
no,
today at least.
that's good. But you don't need any technical skills at all in any way, shape, or form. All you need is a means to pay. And in some cases, you don't even need to pay money up front. You just share the profits with the people that enable you. And like, I'd love to show you UIs and design that they've done around like making it easy for criminals to target people.
This talks about brings us to the point of layered security. And one of the trends we've noticed when we look at IR incidents that occurred is there's often a glaring thing missing. That is,
Oh, multi-factor authentication, of course. Yeah,
so
and like I think it
why are
was
we still at the point that this is not just broadly adopted? What?
well, because I think many organizations see MFA as adding friction in terms of how a user interacts with the services that they need to do their job. But equally, and this is really key, just because you have multi-factor authentication doesn't mean you can put your feet up and go, I'm good. We've seen the growth of the scattered spider group actively using social engineering, tricking people into disabling MFA. And, not just them, but we had examples of the Netwalker group as well. So, yes, multi-factor authentication has to be part of the hygiene for every organization. But equally, don't just assume because I have this control in place that I'm good now. I don't need to worry about security. There is no security control on the planet that is fire and forget.
100%. I think you and I are passionate believers in the each layer by itself doesn't solve a problem. At the same time, you've got to use the defenses available to you in order to be protected. Let's transition to threat intelligence for a second. Another subject that you and I are both passionate about is how do we make intelligence actionable? Now, at Labs at Rapid7, you're one of you and your team are the brains behind a lot of the research we do. Can you talk a little bit about how threat intelligence needs to evolve to keep pace in our current ecosystem?
So we have a mantra inside Labs, which is unified actionable cyber intelligence. Now, I'll try and explain what that means because it sounds like a term from an analyst, whereby when we talk about unified, your attack surface is broader than just the systems you have in your network. It includes your social media profiles, it includes, your partners, your supply chain, everything else as well. And so the breadth of the ingest sources we have here, I think is unparalleled. Not only do we have digital risk protection, we have threat intelligence platforms that feeds our MDR products and feeds we have vuln intelligence that feeds our VM products. We've got all of this collateral which we collect. But the key thing that we do as part of that is we look to extrapolate contextual indicators that allows that data to be actionable. Now, I'll explain what that means, which is let's take a vulnerability, for example. Of the 40,000 CVEs last year, which ones of those CVEs were being exploited in the wild? Because if you're going to patch,
Yeah.
maybe you patch the asset that has a vulnerability that's being exploited in the wild. Now, when we bring our chasm technology, you can start to say, well, actually, we've got compensating controls. So therefore, I don't need to patch that straight away. And I think those are the types of things where we have high fidelity data. So we curate everything to make sure it's, accurate, and we eliminate these false positives. But ultimately, that then drives the prioritization for organizations. And so for me, like, intelligence is useless unless it's actionable, it's high fidelity, and it's unified through a platform.
All right. We're now at the point we have to talk AI. AI-driven threats, there's both hype and reality. Talk to us about what you're seeing, both in reality and frankly, talk about where there's a little perhaps more hype still in the system than reality.
Well, I'll tell you what scares me. The use of deepfakes is something that utterly frightens me. And, this is not a hypothetical. There's been cases where, C-level executives have been faked. They've got onto
Right.
Zoom calls with their teams and they've basically tricked people into giving up millions and millions of pounds. And so that's a very, very real threat.
Yeah.
And it's not one where there is a technology to protect against deepfakes. It's not, there's not an AV for deepfakes ultimately. We are certainly seeing the growth of AI from threat actors. So there was examples just recently. We've seen APT usage leveraging LLMs targeting military systems, for example. The new one that I thought was particularly interesting was Lunarlock, which was a ransomware group that were targeting intellectual property from artists, and they'd stolen the artwork, and they said, if you don't pay us, I think it was $50,000, we're going to take your artwork and make it available for AI companies for training models. In other words, we're going to destroy your IP. So it is there, it is coming, but ultimately, when you can buy RDP credentials to a large enterprise for $3, do I really need to put that effort in? And so we're at this kind of tipping point where we're beginning to see examples, but there's still all the other stuff that we've got to worry about.
All right, Raj, Bunny Loader, Lumina Stealer, malware as a service is not going away. It's persistent. What should defenders be doing?
So first of all, these tools are always evolving and always adapting and always improving. That's allowing literally anybody with a couple of $100 the ability to go out and target and compromise organizations. Now, I know that sounds frightening, but here's the thing I would say. Security, aka slash intelligence, is not a commodity. You can go to a security event and everybody is doing AI and everybody is doing threat intelligence, and yet go and ask them what models they're using or how they're training their data, or you know what they ask them what their decay scoring is on specific artifacts, and they'll probably look at you and go, I don't know what you mean. What we do today, each and every single day, every minute, is we're constantly tracking APT, organized crime, criminal ecosystems, and that intelligence is being analyzed, curated, and integrated into our platform in rapid fashion. And by the way, we're not just throwing IOCs into a blog and going, well, good luck with the noise. We're intentionally focusing upon the quality and the fidelity of that data, because almost every single case and every single IR case, there's some degree of detection or something that would have tipped you off. It's being ignored because you're being flooded with so many alerts.
Now, as we get towards the end of the year, it's really common to give briefings on threat landscapes. What are some of the key things our audience needs to know about the changing threat landscape?
The adversary has got better, much, much, much better than we'd ever anticipated. And since 2023, and I remember the call specifically when we saw the exploitation of the Move IT file transfer software. And I said to Christian, who runs our threat intel team, and I said, Chris, this is an APT threat. I mean, it's coming from Eastern Europe. And he said, no, it's ransomware. And I was like, Chris, I don't believe you for a second. And 3 days later, we saw the ransomware leak posts coming from Clop ransomware. And since that date, we've seen not just file transfer. We've seen, the Cisco ASA exploitation. We saw the Barracuda issues. We saw Fortinet. We saw, I mean, I could sit here for the next hour and go through this. And the remarkable thing is we're seeing exploitation of CVEs from criminal groups, in some instances having overlaps with APT groups. And so criminals are now getting access to tooling that historically were really only kind of being used by APT groups. And Craig, here's what scares me more than anything. Like when we started in this industry, we were always told if there's an O day, it's secret and nobody burns it. And they're burning them like at a rate and a pace that we've never seen before. And we saw this with Black Basta in the chat groups. They were buying an exploit for $200,000. Now, I think they didn't buy it in the end, but the fact that you've got criminal groups buying exploits at nearly $250,000 tells me that like what we have coming up ahead of ourselves are more capable, better resourced, and more democratized threat groups, which means we, as the industry, have to change and adapt the way that we operate as quicker and faster than ever before.
Josh, we're now at my favorite part of our talk, where it's the lightning round, where I'm going to hit you with quick questions and you've got to give me back quick answers. The first, your favorite free open source product from Rapid7 Labs?
Craig, you're going to get me in. You always get me in trouble. I'm going to upset I can't answer that question because whatever I say, I'm going to upset my team. So
Raj, I'm pushing you then. Your top two favorite tools from for Rapid7 Labs.
Okay, so Metasploit, everybody knows of Metasploit. I mean, we all started our careers with Metasploit, and so it's definitely Metasploit, and then also Velociraptor, open source DFIR tool. But really importantly, we actually give you the ability to be able to threat hunt with that. So we have artifacts that we make available as well.
What keeps you up at night?
Every single threat group, every single ETR, like it's nonstop.
What are you most excited about coming up?
So we're introducing the unified cyber intelligence, which is what I talked about. We have a collection and an ingestion pipeline that is so broad, and we're doing some really cool stuff, accessing channels that we thought previously we couldn't access before. We're breaking into them and we're getting data from them.
Raj, always a pleasure. In this threat landscape, I think you and I need to get back to work. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much.